Live from the Washington, D.C. area, all empowered citizens need to know about intelligent use of resources, smart governance, inclusive communities, smart industry, and healthy, thriving urbanization. This is Smart Sustainability, the TV talk about shaping a sustainable future in the digital age with Nicolette DeVidar. Afghanistan, the markets, the economy, loss of liberties, citizen against citizen. The world's unfolding rapidly, even for those who feel comfortable with change and the unknown. So, where are we? How did we get here and what's ahead? Economically, financially, business-wise, and concerning the future of all of us humans. Are we surrounded by arrogance, ongoing lockdowns, or are we shifting power to the people, which is what the 21st century really is about? Our topic tonight, good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Nicolette DeVidar. What we see is quite disturbing right now. More market distortions and a growing disconnect between the stock market and the real economy. Lies, a focus on perception of events, obviously being more important than the events themselves. This is commonly known as manipulating public opinion. We'll give you some examples about that later in the show. We see mass-induced psychosis of citizens going against citizens. And the worst of it, people don't seem to recognize it. We're seeing constitutional breaches in Europe, the United States, Australia. The dynamics in place go even so far as to make apparent pushes to build a denunciation culture. And if you don't know what that is, I invite you to check out former Eastern Germany, the GDR. All things we've seen before in different countries, different regimes, at different times, and what our grandparents fought. Now we see the same dynamic in a global context. It's palpable, and it's not about politics. So where is America? The country whose constitution was set up to be able to consider human nature and prevent a repeat of history's worst moments. Where are the average Americans, all of us, in this? Have we learned something from the past? Are we coming together? Can we leave identity politics behind and focus on change of how we see the world and the human role in it? What's ahead? The good and the bad. Let's talk about it. With us tonight is Gerald Celente. He's the publisher of the Trends Journal, and I'm absolutely honored to have him on. Gerald, great to have you with us tonight.
Oh, great being on. Thank you so much, Nicolette, for having me on.
Well, as you know, the world is unfolding, Gerald. What do you see? Give us like a spectrum in terms of, let's go briefly around the globe and tell us what you see.
It's a global freak show. We have freaks running and ruining our lives. Who's your favorite freak? That little boy Macron over there in France? Maybe you like Biden. No, I like Trump. How about Merkel? How about Sanchez? And then you look at the government. Look at Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, Nancy Pelosi, Gavin Newsom, Bill de Blasio, the mayor of New York, whose real name is Warren William Jr. A little low-life piece of crap changed it so he'd get the Italian-American vote. Look at these. Look at the little clown that just left the New York governorship. Another boy born on third base, little Andy Cuomo. How about the clown you got up there in Canada? What's his name? Trudeau,
yep.
Yeah, another daddy's boy. Here you go. You deserve a government, this is from him, that continues to say, get vaccinated. How about go screw yourself? Who the hell are you to tell me this? Yep. Well, he goes on. And you know what? If you don't want to get vaccinated, that's your choice. But don't think you can get on a plane or a train beside vaccinated people and put them at risk. That's a quote. And I'd say, hey, look, you little jerky, arrogant boy, if they got vaccinated and I didn't, how am I putting them at a risk, you little low-life piece of crap? But that's what people don't have the courage to do. I'm from a different generation.
Yeah.
I'm at a time when men were men and women were women. And we didn't take orders from little boys or little girls. Yeah, there's that little jerk again, this little Trudeau, a daddy's boy. It's one big club and you ain't in it, as George Carlin, the great American comedian, said. He goes on to say, and to protect our kids who can't get the vaccination yet. Yeah. But again, the kids, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the recovery rate of people 1 to 20 years old is only 99.997%. 99.997%. Overall, it's about 99.7%.
But that would mean that people can actually read statistics and understand statistics, and I think we have a problem with that. Wouldn't you agree?
Again, the people have been so dumbed down.
Yep.
You know, there's a great quote by Richard Nixon, who said that Americans, what they believe is what they watch on TV, and that's basically it. What they get on TV is what they believe, and they're getting junk news. Here, this is from Associated Press. They just announced last week. AP elevates bureau chief to top editor. The Associated Press on Wednesday named Julie Pace its Washington bureau chief as its new top editor. The job that gives her oversight of a news organization, you ready? With 250 bureaus and 100 stations. She goes on, this is her quote, being a fact-based news organization does not mean that everybody on every side of an issue gets equal hearing, gets equal voice. In certain cases, the facts are just really clear. And we want to make sure that we are amplifying the facts and not muddying the facts. So, COVID vaccines are safe.
Yep.
Who the hell is she to tell me that a COVID vaccine is safe? And then I'd say to you, hey, little moron, they're not vaccines. They're gene therapy injections, the first ones ever injected into the human body. Got it?
Yep.
That's Associated Press, Associated Prostitutes. Media whores that get paid to put out by their corporate pimps and government whoremasters, boys and girls alike.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit of some of these things just to actually show a comparison, because I really feel that a lot of people do not see what's going on in comparison to really that it's always the same thing. We've been through that in history, in different circumstances, in different situations, but the way how these things are done is always the same. And when you look at it, we patronize citizens, so they keep telling people who's healthy and who's sick. We have in Europe right now some countries where they already shift to what they call the 2G rule, which means it's only for vaccinated and recuperated people. So in essence, we're locking up healthy people are excluded from everyday life. And how come people cannot see that and stand up for that? This is unbelievable. So we see suppressing opinion, we see censorship, in fact, but we also see a pushback from people, and we have prepared a little video, I hope we can play it, to show what's going on in France. It's the 8th week in a row where people actually went on the streets, and it's been 140,000 people. We've seen the same in Australia, we've seen some in Germany. Can we play the video? So we've seen what's happening there in Toulouse, in Paris, in Australia. And then, of course, we see other pushbacks from government, Gerald, like, for example, in Berlin, they said they're banning the conspiracy theorists or protests that go against. So all of this, when you combine that, it paints a really, really bleak picture. But then so that's all for the vaccines, that's all for the civil rights. Let's talk about what's happening economically as well, because there's also an economic repression going on. Right?
Well, look what's going on. Look at business travel. Yep. It's going down. Look at airline travel. It's now hit May lows. Look at all the corporations, the Google, the Alphabets, one after another, saying they're not going to bring people back to work until January. So what's that doing to the commercial real estate sector?
Yeah.
It's driving it way down, and it was overbuilt before. And again, you know, the first people that did the not going to work were these little geeks, these little boys, these little Dorseys and Zuckerbergs and Cooks and Pizza, these little nothings. They were the first people to say to their employees to stay home. And look what it did to boost their business. Look what it did to boost their business.
Yeah.
And they're doing it again. Economically, you know, when I was a kid, they used to play these ads on TV. It's 10 p.m. You know where your children are? You know, we were out wild as could be.
Yeah.
10 o'clock now, man, everybody's home locked up. There's no nightlife. I just got back from Phoenix a week and a half ago, staying at the Valley Ho, one of the top hotels. 10 o'clock. No more serving at the bar. The streets are dead at night.
Yeah.
The rich are getting richer. The billionaires only got, what, $8 trillion richer? The high tech, the big tech companies got trillions of dollars richer. And you're a non-essential piece of crap. You're only a little person. Close down your business. And again, they're not looking at the facts. That other low-life piece of crap who the Americans, they push on TV all the time, that Fauci, that little clown boy came out in March of 2020 on 60 Minutes, the CBS show, and said the masks were worthless. We saw his emails going to former Obama, you know, head of, I think it was Housing and Urban Development, one of those. Nah, don't wear them at the airport. They're useless. Look what they're doing. Oh, the chances of getting it outside and they're keeping people locked up, it's less than 1% according to the data. I'm not making it up. That's the fact. Again, the recovery rate is people 1 to 20 years old, 99.997%. And who is dying from the virus? I'm over here in Cape May, New Jersey. Whales have washed up onto the shore. The people, you should see what the people look like. Only 42% of Americans are obese, 70% are overweight, and this is from CNBC, so you can't make it up. The statistics are in an article published in March by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
It goes on to say that 78% of the hospitalizations due to COVID are obese and overweight people. Okay?
Yep.
They don't talk about getting healthy, building your immune system. Vitamins? Why, how dare you? You got to take an allotropic drug or a vaccination. Build your health immunity? Why, how dare you? No, just keep eating crap, blow up, and guess what? You're going to get sick, whether it's this or something else. And it's costing us billions of dollars in healthcare because these people won't take care of themselves.
Yeah. And didn't they say now they're coming up? Pfizer, in fact, came up and said now, at least overseas, that was the talk, that they said now that there are additional pills you need to take when you get vaccinated to actually try to prevent the side effects. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
They're making this stuff up. They're making it up.
Yeah.
The whole world is going down. Look at I was talking about little creeps. How about that little boy they got over there in Australia, little Danny Andrews, that Gladys been jerking, whatever her name. Look at these people. Look at that slob you got up there in Canada, in Ontario, Doug Ford. You want to talk about a guy, a blimp, and he's telling me how to get healthy? Look who United States Health Minister is. This guy, Rachel Levin. This guy got more chins than Chinatown. You know, I got to listen to him. Oh, by the way, the first book I worked on was Natural Healing in 1980s, a Warner book, and I have an honorary doctorate from the National University of Health Sciences for the work I've done in complementary and integrative medicine, and I got these slobs telling me what to do. So now up in Ontario, you got it. They're locking down. You got to get that vaccination. Without it, you can't go anywhere. They got these whole things, one after another, but you could go into strip clubs if you get vaccinated. I'm not making this up. You could go into restaurants, bars, nightclubs, strip clubs, bathhouses, and sex clubs if you get vaccinated, and they won't even take, fully vaccinated here means having 2 doses with the most recent at least 14 days prior, neither a recent COVID-19 infection nor a recent negative test will substitute for 2 shots. And this is according to this premier Doug Ford. Calling these people premiers and dignitaries, those are curse words. What a premier piece of crap. And it's one after another. When you tell somebody I had enough of your BS, F off, that's not profanity, that's proper language in that situation.
So we've seen always sort of the same recipe. Let's go a little bit over like who started it. When we see, I find really amazing parallels to when you look at the Inquisition, started very similar. When you look at the Inquisition, you had the midwives, the women who had all the knowledge on herbal medicine, on helping with healthy childbirths and things like that. And then when the church came up with the Inquisition and they found that the doctors would take over, then suddenly they started like hunting the women down who had all that knowledge and burn them for witches and things like that. We've seen a very similar tendencies during the Nazis. We've seen a very similar tendencies also in Eastern Germany. So when the communists took over. So what I'm getting to is when we have all these dynamics and we look at it today, there's a new dynamic in place. Where did it start and when did it start? Who was first coming up with this? Gerald.
The Chinese. Go back to the facts. Go back to Chinese Lunar New Year, the year of the rat, 2020. It broke out in the Yunnan province. I used to be on Hong Kong TV in 2019. And I'm talking to the reporters off air before I'm going on air. And they had, 7.5 million people. You had 1 million people out of 7.5 million demonstrating against the Chinese taking over Hong Kong. Because the deal was, they would be sovereign. And they'd have their own laws and their own regulations. I think it was till about 2040 or something like that when the UK finally made the deal with them and turned it back to them. And all of a sudden, they couldn't stop it. They could not stop the protests. 1 million people. I did a rally in New York 2 weeks ago, Columbus Circle, an anti-vaccination in terms of don't force people to get it, do what you wish, and don't force businesses to, as they would do in Nazi Germany, to force to look at your passport. About 3,000 people turned out. 1 million, that's out of 8.3 million people, 3,000 people. Oh, going back to Hong Kong, they couldn't stop it. It breaks out in the Yunnan province. What does China do? Whoop, lock it down, lock it down. Oh, by the way, passed that security law as well. And then you couldn't do anything. China, it was over. They knocked it right out. We used to make fun of the Chinese for locking down societies and people wearing masks. And the reason they wear them over there is because the air is so filthy and only 1.5 million die from air pollution. And now the Chinese way, you will obey. The cover of our magazine on January 28th, 2020, 106 dead in China. The next line was 1.4 billion still alive. What the hell are you telling me 106 people died from?
And that, I think, is a really dangerous trend, Gerald, because it seems to me that we are really lacking the ability of connecting the dots and putting things in relation. There is always something you have to put it in relation with, right? If you look at the numbers of dead, you need to see at the numbers of how many people are alive. You need to put things in relation, and I feel that this is an ability that very few had, and it seems that this is really a lost art at this time. There are no more connections being made. There are no more dots being connected. We can't see how things are related. Where is that coming from?
It's been going on forever. When I was a young kid, I get upset. My father, may he rest in peace, he says, "Son, take it easy. People have little minds." I mean, you look at that chart of Napoleon going to Moscow, with leaving Poland, the area they call Poland now, with 420,000 troops, coming back with 10,000. Look at the war. What was your favorite war? I like the Peloponnesian War. No, the 100-Year War was my favorite. How about the War of Roses? How lovely that was. Look, they make these wars up one after another. Dumb enough to believe Bush's wars, you're dumb enough to believe the COVID war. 88% of the Americans, again, another little daddy's boy, another little nothing of a clown jerk that people swallow the crap spewing out of his mouth. And how about that Obama, huh? Oh yeah, the Nobel Peace of Crap Prize winner. I want that guy Gaddafi out of there. Yeah, I don't care if Libya is the richest country in the world. In Africa. I don't care if they have more rights and more benefits than a lot of places in Europe. I want them out of there. You think the United States would have went into Iraq or Libya if their major export was broccoli? Look how the people swallow the crap coming out of the mouths of these people. It's been going on forever.
Yeah, but there seemed to be, I think, at least, in earlier times, we did have a different, a more whole systems point of view. We were more capable of putting things in relation. And now when you look at a complex world, it becomes more and more evident that we have a very complex world. It's a non-linear world. A lot of the worldviews that we had were wrong to begin with. So now we realize that, what's all this? And it really hits us. In that respect, I want to talk a little bit also about the lies that are being told, because I personally feel, and you actually might at home may feel the same, I feel that at this point we see, or it feels like we see more and more of those blatant lies being served on a platter, and yet you wonder, why aren't we all, up and out on the street and protesting? Look at Afghanistan, for example, when Biden said, and we actually had also a quote of that when Biden had first said, no matter what it is, whether true or not was the quote, about what's happening in Afghanistan, it's the perception that matters. That basically says everything, doesn't it?
Again, they're murderers. There's not a war that Biden didn't love. These people are demented. Dwight D. Eisenhower, 5-star general, supreme commander of the Allied forces, and 2-term president. He warned us of the military-industrial complex robbing the nation of the genius of the scientists, sweat of the laborers, and the future of the children. He also, you can look up this quote, any man that seeks the presidency of the United States is either an egomaniac or crazy. He didn't seek it, but he was there and knew how bad it was. Biden's been sucking off the public tit his entire life. As most other politicians, they've never worked.
Yep.
Oh, they locked down everything during the COVID war. Did they take any pay cuts? No, these are sociopaths, pathological liars. They're mentally ill people. And they're telling, and again, there's no fight in this country anymore. You got no bullying zones in school. There's no fight. You're not allowed to fight. You have to obey. And again, it's been going on for centuries, and it's global. Look what's going on. You talked about the protest. France is really the only country where they're protesting in week after week and going out.
Yes, and we actually saw quotes. I know there are tweets and there are quotes in German media as well, where people say, thank God we have the French because they take it to the street.
Yeah. Again, the people have lost their courage. It's so sad that this is happening. There are 4 gangs that rule the world. The banksters. There was this guy, the stories go, his name was Jesus Christ. He made a whip. and drove the money changers out of the temple.
Yep.
The Goldman Sachs, the Deutsche Banks, yeah, those Credit Suisse, yeah, drove them out of the temple. 3 days later, the cat's hanging on a cross. Number two, the military-industrial complex. I just quoted Dwight D. Eisenhower. Number three, morons and imbeciles call them big pharma. They're drug dealers.
And
that's number three. And number four is big tech. Yeah. They're running the world. We've lost our freedom.
So basically, Big Pharma has replaced what used to be security. Remember when 9/11 was, and then the security people were taking over, and now we have scientists taking over.
Yeah,
same
scientists.
thing.
Yeah, the ones that want to sell the crap that they're being paid to sell. Look who is on the board of directors of Pfizer. Scott Gottlieb. Where was Scott Gottlieb before he got on the board of directors of Pfizer? He was running the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA in the USA under Donald Trump. All right? How clearer could it be? FDA. How about the FUC? You know what, DA? It's one big club and you ain't in it again, as George Carlin said.
So what are we going to do about it?
We have to fight, and I'm doing everything I can. You know, I was just at a conference in Washington with Ron Paul, not Rand Paul, but the father, who was the last person I voted for president. And there were about 500 people there, and great speakers. RFK Jr. was there, Bob Turley, one great, Judge Napolitano, great speakers. The people, there's a group, but we have to unite.
Yeah.
If we don't unite, we can't win. There's something that I read that I may get blackballed for reading this. We hold these truths to be self-evident. This is the Declaration of Independence. That all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Happiness? Why, how dare you? Be a miserable little jerk like a Nancy Pelosi or a Chucky Schumer or a Mitch McConnell. Look at these tight little cats, man. Look at them. Happiness? You will not have happiness and go to any country, Australia, Germany. No happiness. Liberty? No, you have no liberty. I'm in charge. I'll tell you what to do.
Yeah.
And then you read on to the Declaration of Independence.
That's right.
That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. The consent of the governed. No. They lost the two words public servant. Those words aren't allowed anymore. And it goes on to say that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and institute a new government.
Are we at that point?
We are at that point for honoring the Declaration of Independence. Yeah. We, the people, they work for us. Look at these arrogant clowns. Look at them. Could you imagine a de Blasio going man to man against a man? Or a little Gavin Newsom? They're not men. They're nobodies. They wouldn't fight for their freedom. No, but they never send the senator's son to the wars. They send other people. They're not men. They're not women. They're clowns. It's a freak show right in front of the world's eyes in a country near you.
Yeah, it does feel a little bit like Rome's final days, doesn't it?
Yes, and in Rome's final days, It was the weak. It was the weak in charge of the weak.
Yeah.
And that's what you have now.
Yeah.
The weak in charge of the weak.
So we're being ruled by insanity, which obviously is actually more and more visible, really almost everywhere. Very concerning about the language they're using in places. I know in Germany they talk about the pandemic of the unvaccinated. They talk about, oh, the unvaccinated need to be locked away. So, you know, when you come from that kind of culture, well, moving people in ghettos isn't that far away.
No, matter of fact, I want to find this article here. And it's exactly what they're doing. There are two judges in New York that, here we are. This is from the New York Times. Two judges tell defendants to be vaccinated. The defendant was charged with a number of minor crimes, including drug possession and shoplifting. He was prepared to plead guilty, and prosecutors agreed, but a Bronx judge approving the deal added his own condition. The defendant had to get vaccinated. Two judges. In one case, Judge Jeffrey Zimmerman of the Bronx County Criminal Court. He said that Mr. Gregory is not keeping the people healthy, and he would be doing the opposite. And so a vaccination would represent a form of rehabilitation. This other judge, Jed Rakoff, argued that it fell to him to determine whether a person seeking release represented a danger to the community. The unvaccinated, he wrote, did pose such a danger given their, quote, enhanced risk of infecting other innocent people and even potentially causing their deaths.
Yep, so we're blaming perfectly healthy people and actually suggest that there's something that's not correct with them, just as it started in the Third Reich. Same thing.
You got it. And what does he say? That even potentially causing their deaths.
Yeah.
You are causing their deaths? Yeah, get on all aboard to Vaxwitz.
Yeah.
These are two Jewish guys, Zimmerman and Rakoff, telling people that what they would do with the Third Reich, they should do now. And I'm not an anti-Semite. 3 of my last 4 girlfriends were Jewish, so take it easy.
Now, I have a theory I want to run by you. So when you look at how actually bankrupt our systems are, when you look at how bankrupt our economic system is, when you look at how bankrupt our financial systems are, when you look at how counterproductive our health systems are, if we really had a system that's, let's say, a productive health system, we wouldn't have a system that actually brings up more disease or through side effects and other stuff, but actually makes sure that it works towards preventing disease in the first place, meaning focusing on people's health, people's wellness, people taking responsibility for where they are, etc. So, but because our systems are all bankrupt, now COVID came along, doesn't that sound very much like a lot of the people in political offices or in power? They are hiding their incompetence of not being able to face what's coming on after we go back to a more normal life, and they hence keep the COVID extension going on because that's the one thing they can use the vocabulary and they can kind of focus, and it looks like they're doing actually something when otherwise they're totally lost.
You know, you make a great point, Nicolette. One of our top trends for 2020, and we do our trends in December. So that came out in December 2019, was New World Disorder. There were protests going on in France, in Hong Kong, in Algeria, in India. India had 7 consecutive quarters of declining GDP. You go back to 2019, Germany was a fraction of a way from going into a recession. There were protests in Lebanon, Colombia, Peru, Bolivia, all over the world, Chile. And then the COVID war broke out. No more protests, you're not allowed. The people were protesting about poverty, government corruption, crime, violence. They stopped it. I mentioned what happened with Hong Kong, the first one that was closed down.
Yep.
You look at New York before this happened in 2019, East Side, West Side, all around the town, for rent, for rent, for rent, for rent, for rent.
Yep.
You look at the money that the Federal Reserve was dumping into the repo markets in September 2019 to January 2020. Over $7 trillion to artificially pump up the failing markets.
Yep.
This thing was going down before.
And yet they found another way of upholding a patient who's basically been in coma since 2008.
You got it. You got it. And we are going to have an economic crash, the likes of which we've never had before. And my greatest fear is when all else fails, they take you to war. We're talking about the Afghan war.
Yeah.
People, in our Trends Journal, the October 1999 issue, it was a quarterly back then, now it's a weekly, was that the dot-com bust was going to happen by the second quarter of 2000. It did, March of 2000.
Yep.
George Bush gets into office, sworn in January. February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, 8 months later, 9/11. We were in a severe recession following the dot-com bust. All of a sudden, 9/11, the war, then the phony real estate markets, phony stock markets boosted up, and everybody forgot where we were and how we got there. You're going to start seeing the same thing. They're going to take us to war. When all else fails, they take you to war.
Yep.
And the people march off to war. 88% of the people was stupid enough to believe George W. Bush.
Yeah, although it might actually be a little bit more difficult now because I really have a hard time imagining who after the Afghanistan debacle would still follow blindly, obviously incompetent leaders.
Okay, how about this? COVID vaccine progress. That's the headline. Only 1 in 5 say they won't get a jab. They follow the people so easily. Look what they believe it. We have from our Trends Journal. Remember, that's now. This is from September 29th, 2020. A year ago almost. Americans get cold feet over COVID-19 vaccine. The polls show that only 13% of Americans would be willing to take the vaccine upon rollout. Joe Biden and his running mate, Senator Kamala Harris, have raised suspicions about the reliability of any vaccine rolled out before the election. President Trump and his campaign see an effective vaccine as a major way to boost the re-election prospects. In May, President Trump announced Operation Warp Speed, which he compared to the U.S. race for the atomic bomb. The Associated Press reported, once there is a viable vaccine, Trump said he would employ, quote, every plane, truck, and soldier to distribute doses. And here's the best part. The news website Stat reported that many Democrats have indicated a swift vaccine approval would be potentially motivated by the White House. Harris said she would not trust a vaccine under Trump. Biden agreed with his running mate. I trust vaccines. I trust the scientists, but I don't trust Donald Trump. And
says the man who just lied about Afghanistan. Can we please put the Biden video up there with the quotes on the screen? There you go. We do have the typical thing, true or not. It says it right there from his call with President Ghani in Afghanistan. And then when it came out, when Ghani's response was that he basically told Biden well in advance that they were facing a full invasion. So how can anyone believe anything anymore from somebody that's coming from the top?
And that's what I'm trying to tell you. The people swallow the crap as soon as it comes out of their mouth. There's no fight anymore. Here, this was our forecast while everybody was saying no. Trend forecast. Remember, this is a year ago almost. As we have noted, from nations' capitals across the globe to Wall Street, the word is that until COVID vaccine is made available to the public, there will be no strong economic rebound. Therefore, the faster the vaccine hits Main Street, we forecast resistance to get vaccinated will decrease as the major media and politicians promote getting vaccinated as the only way to win the COVID war, with virtually no mention of building up one's immune system and getting healthy. Governments will impose educational and other restrictions on all those who refuse to get vaccinated. And there we wrote that before anybody was saying it.
Yep. I want to switch gears here a little bit, Gerald. We have about 15 minutes left. I want to talk a little bit about what's ahead for us. What do we need to brace for? What are some of the trends that we can focus on? Like what's coming at us economically? Let's start with that.
It's going to be an economic calamity, the likes of which we've never seen. Again, it's been artificially pumped up with negative and zero interest rate policies, negative in Europe and Japan and other countries, and zero interest rate policy in the United States.
Yeah, and actually, hang on a second. I do want to explain that to our audience as well, because I sometimes have a feeling that not that many really understand what negative interest rates is. So when you're actually overseas, when you have cash in your bank account, the banks are charging you interest for you to put your money into the bank. Now, how perverted is that?
Yeah, because the bigs, you're looking at merger and acquisition activity hitting big up new highs.
Yep.
The bigs are getting bigger. They're borrowing money for nothing. You look at the credit card companies, like the banksters, and again, the guy Jesus Christ is on the cross after driving him out of the temple. What do they borrow money from? For about 0.35%.
Yep.
And what do they charge you on your credit card? What, 27%? Whatever.
That's right.
Right? All right.
Yep.
There it is. So now what's going to happen, they have to keep interest rates low to artificially prop up the economies. Now you're seeing inflation going way up. So what you're going to have, if at some point they're going to have to raise interest rates. When they raise interest rates, the economy crashes. If they don't raise interest rates, inflation skyrockets. So the people get poorer anyway, because it's costing you more and you're making less. And again, wages are not going up anywhere near inflation.
Yeah, actually, and that also brings something up, Gerald, that I want to talk about it, because there is this push for universal basic income. The fact of the matter is, even if you have universal basic income, inflation is still skyrocketing because nobody's capping prices.
Here's the headline from this week's Wall Street Journal.
There you go.
EU inflation hits decade high.
That's right.
So of course, you give the people pennies and they're happy.
Yeah.
Everywhere you go in the United States, they're looking to hire people. You name the business, they can't find people.
Yeah.
Why should anyone work for $15 an hour when they could stay home and get $15 an hour and do nothing? So that's what you have going on. There's not a place that you go where you see help wanted signs up. But why work? Every time I go into a Lowe's, a Home Depot, my heart breaks when I see the people working there and knowing that they have no future. At one time when I was a young guy and where I grew up, it was the land of opportunity. But they did away with the Robinson-Patman Act, Sherman Antitrust Act, Clayton Antitrust Act, and of course in the banking, the Glass-Steagall Act. And they allowed the Walmarts and the Staples and the Lowe's and the Home Depots put out the butchers, the grocery stores, the stationery stores, the hardware stores. The people that used to work in those places used to work there and build their own career afterwards. It's gone. The bigs have taken over everything. According to the data, the billionaires in 2020 got $8 trillion richer.
Let's talk for a moment about the disconnect between the stock market and the real economy, because I feel that for people to understand, for audiences to understand, there are still people out there who do not see that there is actually two realities about these two. Can you explain that to our audience?
Yes, before I mentioned that the economy was crashing in 2019 when the Fed was dumping money into the repo markets, and Donald Trump was pressuring the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates to keep the cheap money going. They're money junkies. They're addicts. And that's all they're doing, is they're feeding the money junkies with monetary methadone. The money, they're getting it for free. The hedge funds, the private equity groups, the repo market borrowers, they get the money and they bet. It's all they're doing is they're betting.
Yeah.
And as long as they get the junkie gets what they need to keep it going, they keep it going. They're gamblers. That's all this is. There's no relationship to reality. Look at the price earnings ratios of the stocks.
Absolutely.
They're all-time highs.
Yeah.
So they're junkies. They're addicts.
Yeah.
It's not an equity market. And we went back before, we were talking about zero and negative interest rate policy.
Yep.
Once upon a time, people had a thing called a savings account. They didn't exist anymore. So now what happens, the people have nowhere to put their money and they gamble it into the markets. That's the other part where it's going. What, am I going to keep in the bank and get nothing? Or you keep in the bank and the bank loans it out and you don't get anything? I mean, look at the criminality in front of our eyes.
Yeah, absolutely. And people don't say anything because people still take the money to the bank. I want to talk about something else about the banks, which I find really very, very disturbing, and that's the cash. So I don't know when you went last time to the bank, but I know a lot of people, when you go, I know overseas that's the case. I've heard it here in the US, that's the case too. So when you go to the bank and you want to get cash out, anything that's more than $20,000, you have a really hard time getting your own money. So let me ask you, is your own money not your own money anymore?
Look, I did a whole thing in the Trends Journal going back to 2008 at the fight and the scene that I put on at Citibank when they wouldn't give me my money. And they started giving me the runaround.
Yep.
And they're messing with the wrong guy because I'll put on a scene and you bet they won't. Not only 20,000, 10,000.
Yeah.
There was a guy by the name of FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and he confiscated the people's gold in 1933. You have criminal groups running the country.
Yep.
Just like they've robbed us of our freedom. You will not go out without a vaccination. You will not go into a gym. You will not go into a restaurant. You must put a Operation Warp Speed injection into your body. You think they're going to steal your money? Look at the murderers. Look how many people Obama killed. How many Clinton killed. How many Bush killed. How many Congress killed with all the wars that they've launched against innocent people.
Yep.
Are they going to steal your money? They'll rob your life.
Yeah, and actually,
rob your money.
Interesting that you say that, because now in Europe there's also this big new discussion that the European Union, believe it or not, they actually want to instigate a wealth registry, which has citizens finally up in arms to talk about this, which basically demands that every EU citizen basically volunteers all its belonging, all its property, gold, equity, land ownership, etc., and you put it in a database. Guess what that's for?
Yeah, so they know every penny you have,
That's
so they
right.
can get every penny you got.
That's right.
And Nicolette, it's going to get much worse because they're going to go digital.
Yep.
And when they go digital, they know where you spent it, how you spent it, what you spent it on, when you spent it. They know everything about you. They're going to go digital, and China's already doing it.
Yeah. So how do we prepare? Let's talk a little bit in terms of where are some of the opportunities. what do we need to do to plan, independent of where somebody stands, politically or not? This isn't a political issue. This really is something in terms of that really regards all of us humans and how we want to live going forward. So what can we do? What should we do?
Well, that's what the magazine, the Trends Journal, does. I just showed you our forecast. So we tell people, this is what's going on and these are the opportunities. So I'm going to give you some of them.
Yeah.
I don't give financial advice. We call them on-trendpreneur opportunities. Look at all of the people now homeschooling. Mm-hmm. In my book, Trends 2000, which was an international bestseller, I'm going back to 1996. I had forecast something called Interactive University. The education system we have now was invented by the Prussians at the beginning of the industrial age.
Yep.
To teach people how to read, write, do math, and follow orders.
Exactly. Be on the hamster wheel. That's what it was all about.
That's all it is.
Yep.
It's an antiquated system.
Yes.
So now, with the high-tech system, virtual reality, it's a whole new way of education. The stupidity, the arrogance of a general education. You have to learn algebra. You have to learn chemistry, biology. I'm not interested. Well, you have to learn it. That's the system. All right?
Yeah.
It's the Prussian system. So now that's a great entrepreneur opportunity. On the precious metals end, we're very bullish on gold and silver and also Bitcoin until and if they could regulate it. Because the younger generations aren't going for gold and silver like the other generations are. It's a new world. So we see cryptocurrencies, a number of them still going strong. And we also see gold and silver going strong, particularly when inflation skyrockets and the digital trash backed by nothing and printed on nothing keeps getting more and more worthless as inflation goes up, earnings go down, your currency's going down, so it's costing you more money to buy less. And that's going on already now.
Yeah, and you're talking of physical gold and silver and things that are tradable, right?
Yes.
Because
also, there are the people that, they say that the ETFs, the exchange traded funds, there is that gold. And again, will they steal it from you? Of course they will. It's that they're crooks. They're murderers and thieves. How much more proof do people need? They're murderers and thieves. How many more wars do they have to lie us into? How many more people that they have to kill? And how much more of our money that they have to give to, quote, too big to fail? Too big to fail. Can you imagine that? Giving the money to the banksters that cause the problems. They're too big to fail. And you, my dear Nicolette, are just a piece of crap. Like the rest of the people out there. You mean nothing. You're too little to count.
Yeah, but you know what?
Too big to fail.
Yeah, but the point is that, and this is where people, I think, cave in too easily. What other people think of you very often reflects of you think of yourself. So can we actually draw the mirror and say, okay, so if people let these higher-ups get away with all this stuff, does that not totally reflect the mirror of what they think of themselves, and therefore they feel powerless, when reality is we would have all the power in the world if we only tapped into it?
You got it. And that's why I was in Washington to attend Ron Paul's War on Us event. And that's what it was called, a war on us. And I have to tell you, I've been around a long time. This was the top event I've ever been to, and hearing the speakers and the passion of the people that were there.
Yeah.
It does not take a majority to prevail, but rather an irate, tireless minority, keen on setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of men, said Samuel Adams. And when the American Revolution happened, in that Declaration of Independence that I read, less than 5% of the Americans were for the revolution.
Oh, wow. That's interesting, very amazing, but not surprising. I think, but then let's talk for a moment about something here that when you look at the pioneering spirit of America, when you look at entrepreneurial talent or people who feel like an entrepreneur, those are usually the more risk takers. Those are usually the more people who stand up and do something because they feel more, well, if I want to change something, you go out and do it, right? So they're more like the doers. And we look at a system that has bred a lot of people that has a big apparatus of employees, federal employees, corporate employees, where you kind of in your lane, you get punished when you get out of your lane. And some people don't want to get out of the lane. So it's like, how do we manage to balance those two, so to speak, and still, go back to the roots, the fundamentals of the American Constitution, and follow based on what that is to create a world forward that is how we want to live in a human, dignified, empowered, self-thinking way?
It's not going to happen until the people get into shape physically, emotionally, and spiritually. I mentioned, I read that article from the CDC that 78% of the people dying from the virus are either overweight or obese. How can you be happy living like that? I got on a plane, I came back from Phoenix. Yeah. This guy gets next to me, probably in his 60s, and he orders a Diet Coke. I'm thinking to myself, what kind of moron would drink a Diet Coke at that age?
Yeah.
The guy he was a doctor. I'm out today walking here and I'm watching older people drinking junk. And I'm saying to you, it was so heartbreaking to see the shape of young people and how out of shape they are. And I'm talking obesity. Yeah. So until people get in the best shape they can, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, it's over. It's over. Yeah. Because if you don't have the confidence in yourself, you're not going to beat anybody else. Exactly. And it's about a sane mind, being in a sane heart, and being in a sound body, so to speak. So, yes. Gerald, we're almost out of time. What's your final word for audience you want to share with them tonight? Be the best that you can be. And stand up for your rights and freedom. My definition of hell is taking that last breath and knowing you weren't the person you said you were or could have been. Oh, that's great. Thank you so much for coming on, and an honor to have you. Great to hear you. And thank you so much for watching. And please, you can check out the Trends Journal. There's a lot of things you can actually look and prepare for and learn. And really do get involved, because now is the time. There's no more time for sleeping. There just isn't. Have a good night. We see you next week.